I rebuilt my life after my husband abandoned me without explanation. 7 years later, he wants to reconnect, but I'm happily married. So, yesterday, I, 32F, found myself in a situation that had never even come across my mind. My ex-husband, Eric, 34M, is trying to reconnect with me after 7 years of complete radio silence. It's bringing up a lot of memories and feelings that I thought I had dealt with so many years ago. Eric and I met during our freshman year in college. We joined the campus environmental club, which was quite active. One time, this freshman guy stood on one of the makeshift stages we had put up at the rally with his voice seething with conviction about climate change. He was so very passionate, and I found myself falling for him. We were friends first, making events and posters, arguing about environmental policies that seemed like they went on for hours. That all transitioned into romance as our junior year approached. It seemed to happen without thought, just about when it would have. One evening, a star-studded sky broke out overhead as we walked back toward the dorms after a particularly successful fundraising event. Eric stopped, turned to me, and simply said, "I think I'm in love with you." My heart seemed to miss a beat, and I realized the very same fact, that I loved him too. It was hard, you know? From the very inception, we were young and idealistic, and madly in love. We got married just after graduation, in a beautiful outdoor ceremony. Our vows included not just to love one another, but to make the world a better place. Looking back, this seems almost comically naive, but at the time, it felt right. The first years of our marriage went pretty well. We both found jobs in our field. I worked for a nonprofit dealing with sustainable agriculture, and Eric found a job with an environmental law firm. We were busy, but we were happy, still very much in love, still working toward our goals. Things changed for us in the 4th year of marriage. Eric's law firm took a case against a huge corporation that had broken the law about dumping toxic waste. The case became everything to Eric. He was at the office almost every night, often until 2 in the morning. I felt proud of his dedication but lonely on the inside. We grew further apart, our conversations began to shorten, the activities we did together even fewer. It was during this time that my childhood best friend, Alex, 32M, came back into my life. Alex and I grew up next door to each other. We were the best of friends as kids, able to always find trouble. His family moved away in high school, and though we swore to stay in contact, often life gets in the way. Alex communicated with me over social media and told me he got a job interview scheduled to be in town. I really looked forward to the trip to rekindle an old friendship. We set a date for his visit to our place since Eric was supposed to be working late that day. It was one of those days packed with laughter and nostalgia, the day Alex arrived at the house. We sat on the couch flipping through photo albums, reliving most of the adventures we had during our early childhood. I felt lighter than I had in months, my mind temporarily off the growing distance between Eric and me. That is when Eric stepped in. I believed he must have come back early from work to surprise me, but he actually was the one surprised. The look on his face when he saw Alex and me on the couch was a one of a kind that I have kept in my mind for life. He looked at us shocked and hurt and quickly stormed out before I could explain. I called Eric 2 or 3 times that evening, but he didn't answer. He didn't come home. I woke up in the morning, only to find papers on the kitchen table demanding divorce. I felt so hurt and shocked, considering that Eric could take such a big step without even wanting to listen to what I had to say. I did absolutely everything possible for the next month to get to Eric, called, texted, and even sent emails. I contacted his friends and family, but everywhere he had blocked me. Even Alex tried to call him to clear up most of the misunderstanding, but Eric wouldn't hear it. And after a month, numerous attempts, I finally understood that Eric wasn't going to hear me out. In pain and anger, I decided not to fight the divorce. The next 2 months were the worst in my life. I left our apartment and moved in with my friend Sarah, 31F. I had to sleep on her couch while I was looking for a new job in my own place. I quit my job after we got married. The reason was that Eric wanted me to have time to build our home. Now that I think about it, just how naive was I for giving up my independence so easily? Sarah was quite literally a godsend at this time. She was my college roommate, briefly, before I went to live with Eric, and she instantly opened up her house to me. I spent many nights on her couch, crying and trying to make sense of how my life had fallen apart so quickly, and she listened patiently, offering advice when I asked for it, and reminded me more than anything that I was strong enough to get through this. It took me almost a year, but I got up again. I was employed as a marketing coordinator at a small firm that dealt with the promotion of eco-friendly products. Although it was not environmental work proper, as was my dream, it did enable me to use my skills and make a positive contribution to society. I also got a small studio apartment, not a big one, but it was mine, and the pride in independent achievement was mine. Rebuilding my life, I was heavily involved with work over the next few years and quickly moved from coordinator to manager. I had new sets of friends, through work and the local hiking club that I had joined. I took up painting as a hobby, something that I always had wanted to try but seemed never to be able to find time for when Eric and I were together. I was casually dating then, no commitments. The experience with Eric scared me off from commitments. It was only 3 years ago, at a work conference, that I felt I would open my heart again when I met David, 35M. David was unlike all the other men I had ever dated. He was sensitive, he understood things, he was quietly self-assured in a way that proved incredibly attractive. He worked as an architect engaged in sustainable design. We bonded on environmental issues, just like with Eric, but it wasn't the whole world. David and I took it very slow. We were dating for a full year before we even started talking about moving in together. He never pushed his case on me. Right from the beginning, he respected my space and independence. We did move in together, and this time, it felt right. We got married last year in a small ceremony with our closest friends and family. It was different from my wedding day with Eric, smaller, more intimate, and somehow more real. Life was good until last week when I got a friend request on Facebook from Eric. I thought he did that years ago, and so I was surprised by this friend request. Curiosity got the better of me, and I accepted the request. Almost immediately afterward, I received a very long message from him. He said in the message that he had bumped into Alex at a common friend's wedding recently. Alex had told him what really had happened that day, 7 years ago. He feels awful for jumping to conclusions without even giving me a chance to explain. He apologized for what he did and said that he regretted his act all these years. He said he now lives in our old hometown and wanted to get together to apologize in person and to catch up. He said he was single, and that he hadn't stopped thinking of me at all. I was speechless. 7 years of no communication, and now Eric wanted just to waltz back into my life like nothing happened. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me was angry that he had taken so long to realize his mistake, but another part of me was curious about what he had to say. I haven't replied to Eric's message yet. I told David about it, and he has been very supportive, saying it is up to me if I want to meet Eric or not. I am torn. On one hand, I have moved on with my life and I'm happy with David. On the other hand, there is this tiny part of me that wants closure. I don't know what to do. Should I meet Eric and hear him out? Or should I ignore his message and move on with my life as it is now? Any advice will be welcome. Update 1. Thank you all for your invaluable advice and support. Reading through all your comments, and after some thoughts over for the last couple of days, I decided to reply to the letter of Eric. This made short and to the point points. I replied that I was glad for the apology but that bygones had been bygones and that I was happily married and saw no reason for the two of us to meet up or renew any kind of relationship, not even that of friends. I thought that was it, but no. He immediately responded, saying he understood, but he really wanted to meet just once in order to apologize in person. He said he had so much to say and just couldn't do it justice over a message. I didn't reply to this message, in the hope he would take the hint. But over the next few days, Eric sent several more messages. Each one became increasingly emotional and desperate. In one message, he said he had never stopped loving me and that meeting Alex had awakened feelings he had been trying to suppress for years. One message struck out in my mind. Eric had written about the night of our first date, one that I nearly forgot. We had plans to go to a very classy restaurant together, but when the time came, we went there and found it closed for some renovation. Not one to give up totally, we ended up at this small pizza place, really more of a hole in the wall. And we just sat there for hours, talking and laughing, simply not concerning ourselves with what the time was. One time, Eric once told me it was then that he realized he wanted to spend the rest of his life with me. The message had me taking quite a trip down memory lane. For a moment, I was in the clouds, rejoicing over all the good times we had shared. He could have at least trusted me enough to talk about what he had seen. I showed all those messages to David, who was quite rightly very concerned. We agreed that I should block Eric on Facebook so that he wouldn't be able to contact me anymore. I did this, thinking, and that would be the end of it. Well, days later, I got a bouquet of roses in the workplace with a card from Eric. He said he was sorry for the Facebook bombardment and that he really just wanted a chance to talk. He left his phone number on the card. I was really shocked and afraid. I had never mentioned my place of work to Eric, so he must have made some inquiries to that effect. The roses also looked very much like the ones he used to buy for me when we were married, a particular variety that once I happened to mention I liked. I informed my boss, Maria, 45F, on the spot. Maria and I get along fairly well. She had been really understanding when I was going through my divorce years ago. She was very understanding about this situation and said she would alert security to not let Eric in the building if he showed up. The evening after, David and I discussed much of what was happening. We did feel that the ignoring was no longer an effective strategy, and it was about time to try some more direct approach. David wanted to do the talk with Eric himself, and I was hesitant as I felt that this would only make matters worse. Finally, we both decided that I would place another call to Eric, this time to clearly tell him to stop contacting me. I called Eric the following day from my office. When he answered, he sounded all animated, but I cut him off before he had much of a chance to say anything. I told him, in no uncertain terms, that his behavior was inappropriate and bordering on harassment. I made it very clear that I was now happily married and had no interest in revisiting any kind of relationship with him in any way. A few times, Eric tried to interrupt me to say something, but I continued to speak further. He spoke of new memories from our past, our first apartment together, the stray cat that the two of us had adopted, the future we had mapped out. But every memory he said only reassured me of what I knew to be true. Those were part of a past that was long gone. I warned him that if he ever dared to call me again or reach out to me in any way, shape, or form, without my permission, I would have him dealt with by the authorities. I hung up after telling him that should he find he just couldn't stand it without me, to get help, but to leave me out of it. This conversation made me wanting to cry and to think how wrong I had been. After the phone call, I could not really decide if I felt relieved or sad. It was good at that moment, for once, to have voiced my opinion clearly and stood my ground. Sad, for the young, naive girl of long ago who had her life turned upside down because of Eric's accusations and lack of communication. It's been a week. I still haven't heard from Eric since that phone call. Anyway, I hope it ends with this, but yes, David and I have made plans concerning steps to take in case Eric tries contacting me again. That would include changing my phone number and making our home more secure. This whole situation makes me realize how much, in reality, over a span of 7 long years, I have grown. The old me would have been tempted to meet Eric to gain his approval or forgiveness. But now, I know my worth, and I don't want to allow absolutely anybody to shake the life I've built for myself, least of all, Eric. David has been great about all this. His constant support and understanding have kept us even stronger. We're planning a weekend getaway next month, to relax and put this whole situation behind us. I'll update again if anything else happens, but I'm really hoping this is the last that I will have to deal with Eric. Thanks again for being here for me. Update: when it has been nearly a month since my last post, and unfortunately, I have worse news to add to my case. Just when things seemed like they had reached a dead end, something totally unexpected happened with Eric. 2 weeks later, he dropped an email deleting from another email address he had opened due to my blocking every communication tool he had. His email stated that he was truly sorry for his actions but that he still could not give up on us easily. He went on to claim that he had even visited a therapist over his problems and that he was now a changed man. He really poured his heart out in an email, writing about what was between us before, the college projects on the environment, the dreams we shared about the future. He even told the story of the case he was working on when our marriage came undone, stress at work clouding his judgment. He even talked about the house we were going to buy, an old fixer-upper with a huge backyard where we were supposed to start a garden. The more I read them, the more I gently caressed the screen, and a sad smile found its place on my lips. For a moment, I remembered Eric with a zeal, someone who had ambition, whose eyes beamed with all the wild currents of the storm of dreams regarding the future. And then, I remember the one who has just walked out on me without an answer, the one who refused to listen to my explanations. I never replied to the email. I forwarded it to Dave, and we agreed to record everything just in case of further action. We also decided to change my email address, take out a new one, and ramp up the privacy settings on all my social media accounts. A week later, during one evening as I was done working, I saw Eric while leaving. He just stood close to my car in the parking. At that moment, I felt my heart was racing, and for some seconds, I stood there frozen. But thank God, my coworker Lisa was with me at that time. She had given me her attention and asked whether everything was fine. I filled her in on everything that was going on, and she offered to walk with me to the car. As we approached, Eric started coming toward us. Lisa, bless her, steps in front of me and starts telling Eric to back off or she was going to bring security here to throw his ass out. Eric was now looking very surprised at the fact I did not come alone. He mumbled about only wanting to talk and quickly left. I was horrified by the experience. Lisa demanded she be up until David arrived to take me back home. I narrated everything to David, and we all realized that now was the moment to take serious action. The next day, we went to the police station to make a complaint about him. The officer in front said he was nice, kind of rude, and that he hadn't really done anything that was actually illegal so far, except he can be prosecuted for stalking. They listened to our information and gave me direction on what to do if Eric persists in contacting me. Another step we took was meeting with an attorney who specialized in stalking cases. She recommended that we send Eric a letter ordering him to cease contact. The letter was mailed certified so we could prove Eric had received it. The latter would have secured us a few days of respite, but Eric came over to our place last Saturday. David and I were at the backyard when the doorbell rang. David entered to attend to the door, and I could hear some animated conversations. I entered to find out what was happening, and David was at the door asking Eric to please leave. When Eric saw me, he began pushing past David. David, who is normally the calmest person I know, started physically pushing Eric back and told him that if he didn't leave immediately, he would call the police. Eric looked at me beseechingly, but I stood firm behind David. Finally, Eric left, but not before shouting that he would never give up on us. We called the police the minute Eric left the house. They have taken our statement, including the cease and desist letter and all the documentation we have regarding Eric's attempts to contact me. The officers have said that they will try to locate Eric and have a talk with him. This incident makes us feel insecure and unsafe in our own house. Now we are really considering moving, even though it's our dream house and we love the area. We have also looked into home security systems and cameras. I'm angry that Eric is going to take our lives and make them different. I'm angry that, after all of this, he still thinks he has a right to me. But mostly, I'm scared. I do not have a clue how far Eric might go, and that not knowing is what's so bloody scary. David's been my rock through all this. He's taken time off of work to spend with me. He has been constantly on the phone with the police, our attorney, and we are just taking it one day at a time, hoping that he will finally get the hint to leave us alone. I'll update again if there are any significant developments. Thank you all for your continued support and advice. Update 3. I really must say, it's been a couple of months since my last update, but by now, some level of peace has finally been restored. The police were able to find Eric after he came to our house and gave him quite a lecture. They warned him and told him that if there were any further contacts from him, he'd face the music. It seems the police intervention finally got through to Eric. From that day, he never called or came unexpectedly. Not a word. We are all relieved, yet on our nerves. We went ahead and installed a security system, complete with a couple of cameras around the house. David and I discussed the matter and determined that we would not move from our residence. We cherish our dwelling and did not appreciate Eric succeeding in running us out of the neighborhood. We did make a couple of changes in our life patterns. I started carpooling with my co-worker, Lisa, to and from the employment office, and David arranged to alter his work hours so that he would be present at our home when I returned. The entirety of the experience was an eye-opener. It made me realize the amount of residual anger I had not resolved with Eric regarding our marriage's failure. I find that I feel the need to see a therapist to work it all out and to process this stress from the recent events. It happened in one of my therapy sessions, when the penny dropped. I had been holding on to this idealized Eric from college, this passionate, idealistic young man with whom I fell in love. Little did I know that this person was gone, lost in battle, replaced by another whom I no longer know or trust. Being able to realize this helped me rid myself of the last lingering attachments that held me to our past. David and I are actually closer now than before. The protection and support of my man have given me a feeling of what partnership really means. We have had numerous long conversations about our relationship and what is to come in our future. We even started discussing a family, something I wasn't so sure about after Eric, but now it feels right with David. Things in the office are back to usual. My boss, Maria, has been quite accommodating, understanding with all the happenings. She even gave me a shot to work on this new project about sustainable practices in local businesses, returning me to working on the environment. Lisa, a work friend of mine who squared up to Eric in the parking lot, has been one of my best friends. We grab lunch all the time, and she has been an excellent listener when I need just to release some steam about the situation. I am cautiously optimistic about the future. While I hope it's the last I've heard of Eric, I'm better prepared than the previous times he contacted me. Now I work on my marriage, my career, and my mental health. We are going to take a vacation with David next month. We will go for a hike in the mountains. We really think it will be nice to get a break for a while. Come closer to nature and each other, as friends can do without the nightmare of recent events. When I think back on it, I can't fail to be proud of how much I've improved. The scared, broken woman who slept on Sarah's couch 7 years ago does really seem quite a different person now. I feel stronger, more self-assured, and much more supported than ever before. Thank you all for your support throughout this challenging time. Your words of advice and kindness have indeed been a strength. Hopefully, this will be my last blog entry on this fiasco, and I will just be able to move forward without any more interruptions from my past. Here's to new beginnings and the power of moving on.